All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Hall Simmer channel. For this particular live stream, I'm going to focus on slow flight, and so this will be a short session, but thought I would make it a self-contained unit on slow flight. And I mean, when I say slow flight, I mean 5 knots above stall speed with, in this case, full flaps. So I'm sorry, not full. Yeah, we're doing full flaps. Yeah, we're going to do full flaps. So, having said that, a couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to slow flight. Whenever you do slow flight, you have to apply a lot of power as you get to the, like I say, about 5 knots above stall speed. In this case, approximately about 42, 43 knots. We're going to fly about there, just or 40, just roughly, I'd say about 42, 43 knots. And when we reach that point, we're going to have to add a lot of power. And so by doing that, because we have the nose pitched up and adding a lot of power, we're going to have that left turning tendency we talked about in past lessons because our angle of attack is higher. We got one side of the propeller that's going down that's creating more lift versus the other side of the propeller that's ascending, and so that P factor is going to contribute to the left turning yawing tendency, the left yawing tendency of the aircraft. So as a result of that, we're going to have to add a and again, it depends on how well your simulator simulates this, but we'll have to add right rudder to compensate for that. Also, the controls in the plane are going to feel mushy and not as responsive. So that's something that you would feel more in the real world, but the simulator will do that to some degree. And so you might notice that as you are attempting to do slow flight. What I'm going to do this maneuver, I'm going to climb. Right now, we are at the Spirit of St. Louis Airport, which is Kilo Sierra Uniform Sierra. And we're going to take off from here. Right now, you'll notice we are, if you look at the altimeter, we are about 500 feet above ground level, just a little bit shy of that. So we will climb to say 2,000 feet, which would put us at 1,500 feet above ground level, or a little more than that. And we will do the maneuver there. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and take off. And before I do that, I got to get my desktop organized. So we're going to go ahead and take off, make sure the brake is off. And we will do that climb. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, our goal is to reach 2,000 feet, which is 1,500 feet above ground level. And what I like to do personally is I like to see the nose of the airplane. So I'm going to hit my up arrow in this simulator to see the nose a little bit better. If we got some wind going on today, might be a little bumpy. And right now we are at almost 1,000 feet above ground level. Won't take us long to get to the 2,000 feet. I'm climbing a little too steep as well because I'm focusing on other things. We should climb about 67. So I'm going to adjust my airspeed there and fighting the wind as well. Windy day here. I've got this on live weather, so it is reflecting the current wind here in St. Louis, on the west side of St. Louis. So one thing, before you do a maneuver such as slow flight, just a reminder, I'm not going to do this in this particular stream, but you're going to want to do your clearing turns to make sure that there's no traffic around. And you could reference the past videos. I mentioned clearing turns, probably in the turns video, but it might be in another maneuvers video, but you want to make sure there's no traffic around. Right now I'm at 2,000 feet, so I'm going to lower the nose and let the speed pick up just a bit and back off. Actually, I should back off the power. I'm going to go for about 2,200 RPM right now. Add a little trim. I really do not like the way they put the trim on my joystick. It creates problems because when I adjust the trim, it wants to, if I'm not careful, I'll adjust the throttle and that misses the trim. So it's a bit of a battle. I would rather have a yoke with the trim, its own, the trim wheel is its own contained unit. So anyway, we are about 2,000 feet. So let me talk briefly about the steps, because things happen so fast. Also, the other thing I want to mention is when we get to where we are flying slow, we're going to try some turns, but you want to keep your turns shallow because you're close to stall speed anyway. You're not going to have much wriggle room when it comes to doing turns, because if you do your turn too steeply, you'll go into a stall. So want to be careful of that. And so that's something to keep in mind. Now, so let me talk about the steps just a bit. First off, we want to address air traffic control there. So I'm going to do that.
Spirit Tower Cessna, Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra frequency change.
With any maneuver, so let's say we want to head due west, you'll want to note on your heading indicator, which I'll just point to right here, the heading indicator, we're flying west right now. And you might want to pick a spot out there that you're aiming for, just to kind of give some direction as you're doing a maneuver. You'll do this a lot of time with a number of the maneuvers, so you're going to reference your altitude, which I'm climbing too much. You're going to reference your heading and maybe a reference position outside the window that you will be targeting. I don't have a real good one at the moment. There's a lot of fields out there, maybe the pond, but I'm going to be over the pond before I even start, because I am talking to you guys about some things. I'm going to let the altitude drop just a bit. I've gotten a little bit high. And while I'm doing that, let me talk about the steps for this maneuver. So one thing you want to do is, because you're going to be backing off your power initially, you want to apply the carb heat, which is right over here. So we're going to pull out the carb heat, turn it on, because of the fact that we are slowing down, and we want to make sure that basically there's no ice that might occur in the engine. So we'll apply carb heat. We're going to reduce the power to 1,500 RPM. That'll be the tachometer over here. And forgive me if my plane goes off. It's because I'm basically letting go of the joystick to show you things. And then we're going to, because we're slowing down, we're going to be pitching up and applying back pressure. And as we do that, we want to make sure we keep the wings level and maintain altitude. So if we're at 2,000 feet, we want to make sure that we are maintaining 2,000 feet. We're a little bit higher than that. So, and then the other thing is, when we get to the wide arc, so let me show you that on the airspeed indicator. You see that little wide arc right there? Let me go on a little bit. That's for your flaps. And when we reach that, we're going to start applying flaps, which we're there already. So So we'll probably apply flaps right away as we slow down. And that's going to slow us down even more. And then when we get to, as we're applying back pressure to compensate for the fact that we're slowing down so that we don't drop in altitude, uh, we'll lower those flaps. And then we'll add power, which means we will add right rudder. Um, because again, we'll have that left turning tendency going on. And we want to do that where we try to maintain about 5 knots. Again, about 43 knots above, 43 knots, which is 5 knots above stall speed with the full flaps. And then we'll try some shallow turns once we get that squared away. And then we will resume straight and level flight after that. So let's give this a try and see how it goes. We're at 2,000 feet now, so that's good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start to back off the power. And as I do that, I'm going to apply the flaps in 10-degree increments. There's one, do it again, do it again. And you can see we're slowing down rapidly. So right when I get about 43 knots, oh, I slowed down too fast. So I didn't react fast enough. So let me do it again. Let me take off the flaps. Add full power. Climb just a bit. That was so fast I wasn't ready for it. We're heading west. My flaps are all right. It should pick up some airspeed here. All right, then let's try this again. I'm gonna try to get on a little better. So I'm gonna slow the airspeed to 1,500 knots. As I do that, I'm going to apply flaps. I'm sorry, slow the speed to 1,500 RPM. I'm gonna apply flaps. Try to maintain that airspeed. When I get to about right here, I'm going to punch the power here. There we go. So there we are at, and I'm going to try to trim for that. Going 45 knots, so a little bit faster than I want. I'm going to back the power up, but try not to, right about there. Try to trim for that while trying to maintain a westerly direction. Okay. So the controls are getting mushy. I'm probably having to apply right rudder because of the left turning tendency. So what will happen if we try a shallow, and this is a tough maneuver to do. It takes practice. Try to do a shallow right turn. And because of that left turning tendency, we really have to kind of stay on that rudder to maintain a coordinated turn, the right rudder. And you'll see I'm slowing down just a bit. I don't want to stall. So you see we don't have much. I'm going to keep these turns shallow. So let's say I'm going to turn to the north here. You might even add a touch of power if you're concerned about stalling at this point. But we're north, so now what I'm going to do is go back left. Now here, because of the left turn, see it wants to turn a lot easier because of the left turning tendency. We have a high angle of attack. So you might still have a little bit of right rudder, believe it or not, because if you apply left rudder, you're not going to stay coordinated in your turn. So, again, it might be less right rudder, but still right rudder in this situation, which sounds strange because you're making a left turn. And normally in a left turn, you are using left rudder to stay coordinated, but because we are slow flight, because the nose is at a high angle of attack, we got that left turning tendency going. It might be just a little bit less right rudder instead of left rudder. So you still might have some right rudder going on, and you want to keep that ball in the center. You're trying not to. You're trying to stay at 2,000. I did a poor job of that. I've climbed to 300 feet. Uh, so that's bad on my part. I might get a fail on that. But so you have a lot to think about when you're doing this maneuver. But I think it's a it's a real good one to practice. And then of course you want to turn out at a certain direction, like maybe south or whatever. Um, so you'll pick a certain direction and turn out. So you'll practice those shallow turns, right, as you are in slow flight. And again, you're only, at my case, I'm about 45 knots right now. Now I'm at 43. So you're really only, and I'm at the back up power just a bit. You're only about, a few knots, 5 knots, say, above stall speed. So that's in fact, if you want to challenge yourself, you could try to hear the stall horn and see if you can maintain. Start stalling at the moment. There's a stall horn. So see if you can keep the stall horn going and still maintain altitude, right? That's kind of fun to do. See if you can get that stall horn to stay constant. I keep climbing, but so it takes practice. I mean, that's the bottom line. It takes practice, practice, practice to get good at it. Keep your eye on all the instruments. Well, you want to be looking out too. VFR, you don't want to keep your eyes focused always on the instruments. You want to get to where you're getting a sight picture of your nose against the horizon and all that. But I just wanted to kind of go through some of those steps. So when you're done with that, and again, because I've been climbing the whole time, I'm just going to say 2,500 feet. What you would do is to go back to straight and level, you're going to go ahead and lower. You can apply carb heat because once you lower the nose and add power, I'm sorry, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to take off the carb heat. So right at the very beginning of the maneuver when I was slowing down, forgot to pull the carb heat. I should have done that. So keep that in mind too. But when you go back to straight and level, you're going to add power and push that carb heat back in to turn it off because you're adding power at that point. So we're going to go straight and level. And then we're going to kind of, because the nose wants to climb here, we're going to take off our flaps 10 degrees at a time. And this gets us back to straight and level flight with, cruise at whatever we want to shoot for. We could say 90 knots in this case. So you'll see the power will pick back up. And then when you get to the point you want to, like say 90 knots, you can back the power up just a bit, apply some trim, get where you want to be, and there you are, back to straight and level flight. Again, I'm fighting wind too, so one of the things that might be hard to do is when you're doing this slow flight maneuver, if you've got wind coming against you, it might cause you to balloon upward like maybe I was experiencing. I kept going up and up and up. So it really takes a lot of concentration on a number of things. So let me just go through the steps one more time, just briefly. So you're going to be flying straight and level at a certain airspeed, 90 knots usually. You're going to be 1,500 feet above ground level. You're going to pull back that power. As you do that, you want to certainly pull back your carb heat. You're going to slow down. You're going to apply, when you hit the white arc, you're going to apply those flaps. And when you get to the point where you are, and you're going to be 1,500 RPM on your tachometer, by the way. That's how slow you're going to go. So you see the 15. When you get to that point where you are slowing down, you're going to add the power. 43 knots, say. I was a little late. and then at that point you're going to trim. Once you get to the 43 knots, you're going to trim to hold that, so you don't have to keep holding the yoke. And then you can start once you get there at 45 knots, but that's kind of close. Once you get there, you can, and again, you want to make sure you're maintaining heading like south and to a certain point. So you're trying to stay straight and you're trying to stay straight and level, but you're at a higher angle of attack. And then you'll start doing your shallow turns to the right. Again, keeping in mind whenever you have high power and high angle of attack, you want right rudder to compensate for the left turning tendency and all that. So you'll do your shallow right turn, shallow left turn, and then put the nose down, reduce flaps, add power, get to the airspeed you want, trim for that to get back to straight and level flight once you're done with slow flight. So anyway, I hope that all makes sense. I would like you to give that a shot and see how that goes. And I hope that you have fun with it and that you're able to do it successfully. And again, it takes a lot of practice, but it's a great. And one of the reasons this sets you up for is things like landing, for example. So slow flight is good to practice because right before you land, you're going to be doing some slow flight, as it were, is right before you touch down. In fact, we're going to talk more about that when we do stalls. So anyhow, give that some practice and hope you enjoy it. And we'll talk to you next time when we get into stalls.